What do you do when the whole party shows up to play and everybody picked Warlock? In this video, my full party of Warlocks is going to use every strategy they can, fair or not, to make it through Act 1 on Tactician difficulty. Each of my Warlocks has an area of expertise and a little bit of personality to add some flavor to their character, but before we can meet them, I'll need to get to Withers all by myself so I can recruit hirelings. I looted the prologue ship pretty thoroughly so I would have a lot of tools to work with, but I'm just one Warlock and a very weak and fragile Warlock at that. So wherever possible, I'm going to try to talk my way out of the situation, and I thought I'd give it a go on this first group of enemies here. 1v4 doesn't seem like good odds.
That's our ship.
Since this is a Warlock run, I decided to go with the Warlock dialogue option.
Poisonous what? We're leaving. Come on, move it!
Well, looks like that did the trick.
What do you give a book? Everything all right out there?
This time I actually have to make a deception check, but I have pretty good charisma as a Warlock, so the odds were in my favor.
I told him it wasn't safe out there. Get inside.
I headed inside and he was not happy about it.
Who the hell's... You're dead!
I fired off a massive hit of damage on him, actually the most that I could possibly do in one hit. But he's more used to me alive than dead, so I actually went back out the door. After waiting for a little bit, I hopped into sneak mode and went back inside. Luckily for me, he went and told all his friends and grouped them all up at the doorway. Now I just need to find a way to kill all 6 of them. So of course I'm going to use explosives. I took those nautiloid tanks from the prologue ship out and started setting up my trap. I threw a lit torch onto the ground before putting one more nautiloid tank down and heading off to a safe distance. I used minor illusion to lure all of them over to my massive explosive trap, and 5 of the 6 of them came to check it out. Once everybody was in position, I put the game into turn-based mode so they'd stop moving. Then I threw a caustic bulb at the lit torch, which exploded the first tank, which chained and exploded the rest of the tanks, killing everybody instantly, except that last guy. Now 1v1's a lot better odds than 1v6, but I decided to go outside and level up to 2 just to make sure that I had the best possible chance of not getting slaughtered. I took Dissonant Whispers as my spell. I took Mask of Many Faces for one invocation and Beast Speech for the other, so I'll be the perfect face of my party. Then I headed back inside and got into the fight. I pretty much just unloaded my spell slots as much as I could, using Dissonant Whisper twice and then firing off Eldritch Blasts until I had won the fight. My next challenge was to get through an army of skeletons that are guarding Wither's sarcophagus. But these skeletons have been here for a long time, just rotting away, and I guess for that reason, they can't jump. Since they can't jump, I went ahead and made a wall made of chests, and now I can just hide inside the room where they don't have line of sight on me, and I can just poke my head out, take a shot, and go back in where it's safe. I just did this over and over again until I had finished all of them off. No problem. And now that I've met Withers, I should be able to recruit hirelings to fill out the rest of my party. Except apparently he didn't want to offer me any hirelings, so I thought maybe I need to progress a little bit further before I can actually get them. I decided to go get into the Druid Grove. I figured it shouldn't be too hard since there's so many allies fighting on my side. Well, me and my allies got kind of insanely bad RNG, and I did win the fight, but I was the only one standing by the end of it. Literally everybody else was dead. I went and looted a bunch of corpses, and it turns out that was my first mistake, because when I came over and revived Will, he instantly decided there was a thief on the loose and accused me of stealing. I tried to talk my way out of the situation, and I missed the ability check by 1. So I guess I'm fighting Will. I tried to do as much damage as I could, but I was out of spell slots and he did a little cheater heal right before this fight started, so he was good to go again. I got him down to 2 HP before he blasted me and gave me the game over screen. He was literally dead on the ground when I was looting those corpses, but I hadn't saved the game anytime recently, so I had to do the fight over. After the fight was over, Aridin punched out Zevlord, knocking him unconscious, which made it the perfect time for me to pick his pocket because even if I fail, he doesn't know, so I just did it over and over again until I had everything I wanted. The game still wasn't offering me hirelings, so I went ahead and made 3 new custom characters for myself. I followed this YouTube video tutorial, but there's a whole bunch of them. I just like this one because it was super short and to the point. My first party member is Bonk. Bonk is a tanky warlock who's going to be my frontliner, and he's got Devil's Sight and Fiendish Vigor, so he can see in darkness and he can give himself temporary health on command. Speaking of on command, he's going to have the command spell because his patron is the Fiend. He also has some fire spells. Wherever my main character is, Bonk won't be far away, and whether this is because he's in love with her or because he has some kind of obligation to her is unclear. But he's pretty much always by her side, and anytime he's not, he gets anxious and tends to get himself into trouble. Next up, we've got Jack Oat, but he just goes by Jack. Jack has a kind heart that was made a little darker when he was bullied as a child, and that's why he sought out his archfey patron. He wanted to have the power to stand up for himself, and he'd like to believe that he can use this power to stand up for others as well. In combat, he tends to be extremely supportive to his allies and extremely disruptive to his enemies. Jack hates the fact that his patron is his source of his power and wishes that it could have been literally anything else, but he didn't know what else to do at the time. My final party member is Reginald Ravenshadow, probationary manager of the Archfey's left-handed wand emporium at your service. So everybody just calls him Lefty for short, and he hates it. He hates it so much. Reginald Ravenshadow, the probationary manager of the Archfey's left-handed wand emporium, hates having to do work himself. He wants to manage others, so he's always seeking ways to bend others to his will, and he also desperately wants to figure out what it is that he lacks so he can stop being the probationary manager of the Archfey's left-handed wand emporium and be the actual manager of the Archfey's left-handed wand emporium. Now that you're familiar with the party, let's get back to the adventure and take care of this bugbear assassin. Lefty is usually looking for the easy way out, so you'll find him trying to take care of combat in whatever is the easiest way possible. You'll also find that a lot of times his party members have to finish the job for him. After all, he's trying to get away from this low-class hands-on work and get more into the managing aspect of his job. You know, I didn't actually give my main character a real name, so I'm gonna just go with Pinky because pink hair. Pinky likes to try to talk her way out of situations, but that doesn't always work out, and in this instance, she wasn't given the chance, and she's very fragile. She got slaughtered instantly. But anytime Pinky's in danger, Bonk comes rushing into the scene as quickly and recklessly as possible. With Jack running interference on enemies, putting them to sleep, and Reginald just absolutely wiping people out with his powerful magic, the party actually works pretty well together. Although Pinky isn't really a fan of getting wiped out over and over again, so she's probably going to play things a little bit safer moving forward. We finished off the rest of the goblins with Eldritch Blasts and headed back to the Druid's Grove. At the Druid Grove, Jack had an experience that changed the entire trajectory of his life. He met Alfira. She was struggling to come up with a song, so he offered to help.
It can't hurt.
He picked up a spare lute and started playing.
I'll start from the beginning.
The performance check was pretty steep, but I managed to get it exactly at 15. The next performance check was much easier, and I even rolled a nat 20. Jack barely knew her, but he could already feel himself falling in love with Alfira. This experience is what gave Jack his musical instrument proficiency. It's also what led Jack to go investigate the music that he heard on the outskirts of town. He was hoping it was Alfira and he could go down there and have another great experience with her. But Jack could tell almost instantly that the music was not Alfira's and it was actually from a harpy. And the pull of the music was extremely powerful. A tiefling child was walking into the water straight to his death. Jack knew that he had to do something or the child would die. And he knew that he had to do it alone because if his party members got too close, they might become enslaved by the music. But really, what could a level 2 warlock do against the power of 4 level 3 harpies? Jack barely managed to survive the harpies' initial attack, and he has just one chance to take them down before they finish him off. Jack isn't completely alone though. His party members are close enough to be able to throw potions at him. So I had Pinky throw a potion of speed at him to give him an extra action point and more movement speed. I tried to use a scroll of grease to knock down the harpy that was singing the song, but unfortunately it only knocked down the other harpy that wasn't the one that was singing. Lefty decided to be a good manager and gave his party members some room to work with by knocking the siren away from him so that Jack would be able to move without getting hit by an attack of opportunity. Jack threw a lit candle out of his inventory onto the grease and broke the concentration of the singing harpy. Then he used his action point to throw a void bulb to try and pull them all together, but the one up top saved against the pull. So I took a second void bulb and threw it on the ground and then just moved it into the fire, which exploded it manually, pulling everybody into position while Bonk, back in camp, was sending some supplies over to Jack. I threw a chest down on the ground and then stacked 2 oil barrels on top of it so they wouldn't get exploded by the fire. Then I moved down to a safe position, not really, and I threw the last oil barrel out of my inventory, blowing up all 3 harpies in one hit. Of course, Jack is in a bit of a dangerous situation at this point because he's basically underwater, dying. It's not looking good for him. Okay. But those kills brought our party members up to level 3, and Bonk wasn't in combat, so I was actually able to level him up to 3. I gave him the mirror image spell so he could increase his armor when necessary, and he took the Pact of the Blade. So now he can bind a pact weapon, allowing him to use his charisma to deal damage with it. And I bound the Everburn blade that I got from Commander Zalk. Then I had Bonk chuck a health potion all the way down to Jack to get him back on his feet so the 4 of us could take down this last harpy. The harpy's song failed against 3 of my 4 party members. Lefty fired off the first Eldritch Blast before getting behind Jack and shoving him so that I could actually get line of sight on the harpy because I just barely wasn't getting it. And the shove was pretty lucky because it was not a high chance to hit. Jack was able to hit a second Eldritch Blast on it and then a third Eldritch Blast because his potion of speed was still giving him an extra action point. And Bonk moved in for the final blow. Because of all these experiences seeing the power of music, Jack decided to multi-class as a bard. Pinky went to level 3 and took Pact of the Chain so that hopefully she can summon an imp to take hits for her. And Reginald Ravenshadow also took Pact of the Chain because he just likes giving things orders. And the party laid down for our first long rest. The next day, we headed into a village, and it turns out we had walked right into a goblin ambush. This time the goblins were actually willing to speak to us for a little while though, and Pinky is pretty persuasive, so I decided to see if I could talk my way out of the situation, and I noticed I can customize my dice, so I made it blue. Unfortunately, I rolled a 2, so I used a point of inspiration to let me roll again, and on my second roll, I got a nat 20. They probably shouldn't have let me talk them out of it because I just got in position and thunder waved 2 of them off the rooftop, ambushed them with my familiars from behind, fired Eldritch Blasts down at them. Oh wow. That only did 1 damage. For some reason, Bonk wasn't even in combat with these guys. I swung an attack, it missed, and it let me just swing again, so I hit for 14 before shoving the goblin off the roof to finish it. I got hit by a pretty big damage ray of sickness, but the fight was pretty much over at this point. My fine familiars took out one of the goblins, and we finished the last one off. Then I headed further into the village, and I used Minor Illusion to stack up 4 enemies all right on top of each other, and put the game into turn-based mode so they wouldn't move. Then I blast all 4 of them with Burning Hands and immediately blast them all with Burning Hands again, killing 3 of the 4. I went for a pommel strike, but only did 1 damage with it. So I had Lefty finish the job. On the other side of town, I found a sleeping bugbear, and I decided to open with a Dissonant Whispers and misclicked on my imp, killing it. I forgot to unbind my imp, so it was trying to path back to me and went right in front of my cursor right when I clicked. Okay, let's give it another go. I hit with another Dissonant Whispers, but it didn't put me into combat, so I fired off an Eldritch Blast, which didn't put me into combat, so I fired off an Eldritch Blast, and then I fired off an Eldritch Blast, and then I fired off an Eldritch Blast, just Warlock things, fired off an Eldritch Blast. Succeeding on stealth checks is pretty overpowered. I had Jack give my entire party Featherfall so that we could jump into the back of the goblin camp. And once we were near the goblin camp, I used my Mask of Many Faces to disguise myself as a drow. I sent Pinky and Lefty in to the goblin camp by themselves since they were the 2 drows, and it allowed me to talk my way into the camp without any ability checks necessary. I found Minthara and we had a conversation that resulted in her getting ready to ambush the Druid Grove. Now, we don't actually want to kill the Druid Grove because Jack would freak out. That's definitely not acceptable, but it's going to be easier to take them out when they're on our turf instead of theirs. While Pinky and Lefty were in the goblin camp, Bonk started to get a little bit anxious and he was feeling nervous and he needed to go take it out somewhere. And he saw all these goblins at a windmill and decided to just run into the fight. These aren't really good odds for a fight, and And we missed our first attack. It's 2 against 9, so it's probably not going to go very well. I tried to position Bonk where he would be in line of sight of Jack, who's hiding in the windmill, but he got surrounded pretty quick and took an absolute beating from both the wargs and all of the ranged attacks that the goblins were firing at him. I had Jack use Healing Word on him to give him a little bit of healing, temporary health, and it gives him Blade Ward because of the gear that Jack is wearing. Blade Ward reduces damage dealt to him by half if it's bludgeoning, piercing, or slashing. And Jack got involved in the fight, started firing off Eldritch Blasts, as warlocks do. The two of them did manage to finish off one of the wargs, and Bonk just started chugging health potions every turn because he was taking an absolute beating. I used both of his spell slots on Hellish Rebuke, but the second one didn't really do enough damage to be that worthwhile. And the goblin boss was able to make 2 attacks every turn, so I was getting absolutely pounded. Plus, they were even firing shots up at Jack, so we were getting absolutely destroyed. And that's when Pinky and Lefty made their way over to us. They both summoned imps so that they would have some extra help in the fight, and they moved silently towards the fight so they could get some sneak attacks in. The first imp's attack was massive. He one-shot the enemy who was going for it, doing 11 damage. The second imp unfortunately got a critical miss. Reginald knew the team wouldn't be able to survive without his leadership, so he gave himself some temporary health before getting into the fight, and Pinky fired off an Eldritch Blast to get in the fight as well. Now the fight is looking a little bit better, but Bonk is still pretty hurt at this point. And the goblin boss came in with 2 attacks and finished Bonk off, except Bonk is a half-orc and resists death on the first hit unless it's a critical strike. I had Pinky Misty step into a better position and go for a Dissonant Whispers, but the goblin boss saved against it, so it didn't do too much damage. Bonk got an absolutely massive hit on the warg to finish it off and chugged another health potion, and since his patron is the Fiend, he gets temporary health when he kills something. That combined with a Blade Ward and a health potion, and he is back in good shape. The rest of the fight we just mopped up with Eldritch Blasts until it was just the goblin boss left, and Bonk slammed him, causing him to surrender and beg for mercy. But we're trying to deceive the goblins into attacking the Druid Grove, so we can't really leave any witnesses. My party took a short rest, and since they're all warlocks, we have all our spell slots back and we are good to go. As far as the NPC that was tied to the windmill goes, we couldn't really have any witnesses. The last enemies to take care of in town are these 3 ogres. I sent my cat familiar in to prep the area for me so that I wouldn't have to talk to them until I was good and ready. I cleared the barrels out of the corner and put some chests, making a semi-cage that I was hoping to trap the ogres in. They wouldn't follow my meows, so I got angry and went up and attacked one of them, which quickly got my familiar destroyed. But it's no problem because I have a second familiar, this imp, and I made it go invisible and moved it close to the ogre. Then from the rooftop, I cast a minor illusion up in the corner, and I got the ogres to move up there, 2 of the 3 of them at least, and I had my invisible imp move the last chest just a little closer, trapping them both. The ogre that wasn't trapped ran over to try to fight us, but we had it heavily outnumbered, and Bonk was able to just spam temporary health anytime he needed it, so we took that ogre down without much trouble at all. Once it was dead, we all hopped up on the roof and took turns firing shots at the 2 trapped ogres until we killed the both of them. It took quite a while because they have a lot of health, but it's going to be well worth it because the ogre is wearing something that Reginald desperately wants. If only Reginald were more intelligent, he could move up the ranks and become the official manager of the Archfey's left-handed wand emporium. But Pinky picked up the headband of intellect first and told Lefty that he'd get it when he earned it. Lefty was pretty pissed about this, so when we got into our next encounter and we found a bugbear making love to an ogre, Lefty didn't hesitate to slap a crown of madness on the bugbear and make him attack his love. You know, the rest of us thought this was pretty messed up, but he's upset, and you know, who among us hasn't done something we regret when we're upset? Not to mention, the bugbear actually shook off the crown of madness almost immediately. Something about the power of love goes here. We finished off the ogre, which understandably made the bugbear pretty upset, and we had the bugbear down to 1 HP and all took turns missing attacks against it, 3 in a row, and the bugbear just turned around and slapped Jack across the face, taking him down. But we did finally manage to land that extra point of damage, winning the fight and earning us another long rest. During the long rest, I used my first Illithid Worm to give the Concentrated Blast ability to Pinky, because she pretty much is using Detect Thoughts, a concentration spell, all the time, and this ability, Concentrated Blast, lets you break a concentration spell to do guaranteed damage. We headed back out and made the final push to level 4 so that we would be ready for the Goblin raid on the Druid camp. Before leveling up, I threw a massive amount of crap down on the ground so that I would be able to use it during the Goblin raid to give us the best possible chance of winning. I definitely put more items down than I needed, and I wanted to try throwing all sorts of different stuff, so a lot of them didn't make any sense, but I was just giving it a try anyways to see what would happen. When Pinky leveled up, I gave her the Witch Bolt spell, so she'd be able to connect a lightning bolt to her enemies and then deal consistent damage. I also gave her the Alert feat so that she wouldn't ever be surprised again, because she definitely doesn't like it when she gets slaughtered, and that does happen as the face of the party. Bonk grabbed the Misty Step ability, and he got Savage Attacker so he can do much more damage when he lands his sword attacks. Jack went to level 2 as a bard and grabbed the Longstrider spell, and Reginald Ravenshadow grabbed the Darkness spell and just moved his stats for Dexterity and Charisma up 1 point each. With the level ups complete, we were ready to blow the horn. Or not quite ready. First, we need to summon some mage hands to help us throw all these objects off. So I put the game into turn-based mode and had Bonk, Jack, and Lefty all summon a mage hand. Then I exited turn-based mode and did a quick short rest, summoned the familiar that should have been out already, and put the game back into turn-based mode and had everybody summon another mage hand. I used my second short rest to summon more mage hands, and then I even used Song of Rest, which Jack got as a level 2 bard, to do a third short rest so we could summon 4 mage hands each. Now that we've got enough helping hands for the raid, it's time to blow the horn and get this battle started. The war horn gives all of us the rallied status effect, which gives us 8 temporary health, and that applies to every single mage hand. That means we've got an extra 96 temporary health across all of our mage hands, and they're not even just useful because of the health. They can pick up all the objects that I've dropped and throw them down at the enemies. I started by throwing a Void Bulb, which grouped up a bunch of enemies and also pulled all of those barrels together with them, which is really important because inside each barrel there's a little surprise. The next mage hand threw a grease bottle and greased up the area under their feet, and the mage hand after that threw an Alchemist's Fire and lit them all up, doing a bunch of fire damage and inflicting the burning status effect. This spider jumped up here, went straight to the backline, and butchered Lefty, immediately down. But it's okay, because the mage hands can just throw the healing potions that I placed on the ground to get Lefty back on his feet. I meant to throw this bottle of toxin, but I actually accidentally smacked it instead, so now there's just some poison up here. I threw a lit torch at the barrel to see if it would explode it, but it actually just broke the barrel, and then the fire blew up the oil that was on the ground, which is a lot less damage. I threw some boots off the edge, and they missed the attack, but did 8 bludgeoning damage from falling. And then I started flying my mage hands down to be a meat shield for the gate. I tried throwing a bone, a teddy bear, some rings. None of those did any damage. They're probably just too light, but I wanted to give it a try anyways. And then I shoved an oil barrel off, which I actually thought was gonna break, and it didn't. So what I did is I had one of my mage hands fly down, and then it just moved it over into the fire and blew it up on a goblin warlock. I tossed this war horn, which actually did great damage, and killed one of the explosive goblins. And once all that was done, the giant ogre finally made his way into the battle. I flew pretty much all of the rest of my mage hands down so that they would just soak up damage and just generally be a nuisance, and they can take a lot of hits before they actually die, like a surprising amount of damage because they're resistant to physical damage types. I attached a Witch Bolt to the ogre with Pinky and then just moved her back to a safe distance so she can just activate that every turn for damage. And then I blew the horn again, giving everybody more temporary health. There were only 3 mage hands left at this point, but it's still a lot of extra health to get at this point in the battle. I shocked the ogre with my Witch Bolt again, and Bonk was itching for combat, so he Misty stepped down and blasted a group of goblins with burning hands. Then I had Pinky cast Darkness on Bonk because Bonk has the Devil Devil's Sight ability from his Eldritch Invocation, so he can see in magical darkness. So he has advantage against all of these blinded enemies, and they have disadvantage when attacking him. So it made it really easy for him to land hits on them and finish them off. Minthara finally made her way down with her entire army absolutely butchered. Completely outnumbered, there was really nothing that Minthara could do to win this fight, and we did miss a kind of outrageous amount of attacks on her as well, but Zevlor finished her off, and with that, the goblin raid was over. Or was it? I looted Minthara's corpse, and then I looted a bunch of other corpses in the area and made the same mistake as at the beginning of the video, because it counts as stealing, and they got mad at me and literally interrupted a cutscene to try and chase me down and kill me. And I tried to run away, and they were literally just chasing me down, trying to slaughter me after I basically saved all of their lives, and it just really made me upset. I was so annoyed that I was having to get away from all of these people that I just saved. So I stopped and thought about it for a second. And that's when I decided I'm going to kill them. I'm not running away from them after saving all of their lives. I'm going to kill all of them, and this is their own fault for not letting me loot the corpses that are, quite frankly, mine to loot. I had my imp fly up and set up some oil barrels and then shot a fire arrow at it to slaughter an enemy, and that really sealed the deal on me needing to fight them. So I full on combat. I just was absolutely trying to murder them. I had Lefty throw a smoke powder bomb from up top, and then had a very anticlimactic throw the candle in the oil moment because nobody was actually standing in it. Will was on their side, and he came and went up the ladder and he wanted to fight me, but I was having none of that because he has already killed me once in this video, and I'm over it. So I blasted him back off the side and killed him in one hit. I finished off all of Zevlor's reinforcements, and finally I finished him off as well. But something happened when I killed Zevlor that I could not have expected, because it seems weird that this is how it worked. But apparently when I killed Zevlor, something in the game's code decided that that meant the goblin raid had succeeded, and it killed pretty much all the children in the camp, and it also killed Alfira. And I don't know what to do about this, because Alfira is kind of a big deal to Jack as a character, and I don't feel like my actions got her killed. I really feel like it's a weird code thing that isn't my fault. I couldn't decide if I should live with the unfair consequences of my actions, or if I should go back, not fight and kill Zevlor to make sure that Alfira stayed alive. And because of that, I'm ending the video right here. If you have an opinion on what you think I should do, let me know, and if enough people are into this run and want me to continue it, then I'll go with whatever people think makes the most sense. Maybe Jack is driven to madness because he lost the first woman that he loved. Or maybe we go back and Jack continues his road down becoming a bard and getting stronger with the power of music. And if you're itching to make one more decision right now, you should make the decision to click on this video right here, because I roleplay Krieg the Psycho from Borderlands as a Dark Urge barbarian, and I think it's an amazing video. You should definitely watch it, and if you already watched it, then YouTube is probably going to recommend some sort of video right here. Bye.